we didn't create a website. We didn't create full-size packaging. We put them in our Scentbird 8 ml vial. We put a label on them, get a room and about last night, and we put them up on the platform, and we just wanted to see what would happen. And on a platform that has, 400, 500 brand name fragrances that are household names that people recognize every day and actively seek out, Get a Room became the 4th best-selling fragrance within that year.
Wow. Welcome, Jeniece.
Oh, thank you, Brittney.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Scent World podcast.
I am very happy to be here.
I'm really excited to dive into a brand that I love, a brand that was born through Scentbird in a way that's unique and kind of points the industry in a new space, a new direction, away from convention. As our VP of product, I know you played a key role into bringing the brand to life. And that brand we're talking about today is Confessions of a Rebel.
Exactly.
How would you describe Confessions of a Rebel?
Oh, Confessions of a Rebel. How would I describe it as a brand? Confessions, I think, is probably one of the most raw and authentic fragrance brands that is on the market, in my personal opinion. And I also feel like the way it interacts with our consumers and what makes it so special is that they are really our muses and serve as the inspiration and the voice of the brand.
Could you take me back to 2018 when the Confessions of a Rebel brand was birthed and just give me a play-by-play of how you and the team developed the brand from scratch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest disconnects within the fragrance industry is how regular consumers, regular people talk about and describe fragrances versus how industry experts, AKA perfumers, evaluators, marketers, creators talk about fragrance. And oftentimes that disconnect can lead to fragrance creation that maybe isn't as appealing to the consumer as you intended it to be. So like, for example, a perfumer might smell something and they're looking at it from like a classical olfactive categorization where they're like, this is a gourmand because it's constructed with vanilla and cocoa and it has, a little bit of a powdery sweetness. Whereas a consumer could smell it and they would be like, oh, this is fresh to me. And so people are saying, I like fresh fragrances. And then a perfumer starts making fresh fragrances and the person gets it and they're like, I hate this. And the perfumer's
this
like,
isn't fresh to me.
Right. But the perfumer's like, but this is what you asked for. Whereas what the consumer actually wanted was a gourmand, but they don't know the proper terminology.
Yes.
So there's always this disconnect in between what people say they want and then what they actually want. And I think what's really interesting about Scentbird is we were able to bridge and kind of stop that disconnect because we were able to give people a way to vocalize what they thought about fragrances on their own. So we are looking at this data. We're looking at a fragrance that we know is a vanilla. We know it's a gourmand edible fragrance. And we're reading how people are describing it. And they're not describing it as gourmand or sweet or vanilla. They're describing it as feminine and sexy and fresh. And in ways that when we're smelling it, we're like, I would never describe it that way. But we're seeing that's how many people are describing it. So what we're realizing is this Scentbird customer base is kind of this infinite resource of insights into how people think and what they like and what they're looking for.
Yeah, the general consumer, right?
Exactly.
It represents a big subset of how the average person is seeing, looking for, and describing fragrance.
Exactly. So we wanted to see what other interesting information we could pull out of it. So we went to Scentbird. We pulled the top 20 best ranking fragrances for men and the top 20 best ranking fragrances for women. And then we dove deeper and we pulled out the top 20 most common notes that were found in those men's fragrances and the top 20 most common notes that were found in those female fragrances. And we looked at them side by side. And when we looked at them side by side, we were like, oh, my God, because 13 of those notes were identical, meaning 13 out of the 20 men's notes were the same as the 13 out of 20 women's notes. So now we have this moment of aha, where there are 13 perfectly gender fluid, perfectly unisex notes that men and women absolutely love. And that's new information.
Right.
Because up until that point, unisex was always just like CK1, CKB, like clean, aldehydic, fresh laundry, that type of thing. And the notes that we found were not that at all. It was like vetiver, cypress, bergamot, mandarin, apple, sandalwood, vanilla, like not anything that would be found in any of those like super fresh fragrances whatsoever.
Absolutely.
And that was super, super interesting to us. Now, the thing that's really interesting about perfumery is you can take the same 13 notes and by the way you mix them, so the percentage of each one of those notes within a fragrance, you can get completely different olfactive profiles, like night and day. So we were like, let's create 2 totally different fragrances out of these 13 notes. But these 13 notes are what's in these fragrances, like basta period, nothing else. That's it.
Really? So we have all in our confession. That's like a kind of DNA thread that's in our Confessions of a Rebel fragrance, those 13 notes.
Not necessarily all 13, but because that's a lot of notes in a fragrance, but those were the pool that we had to pick from, let's say. So we didn't go outside of those 13.
So we've got 13 gender fluid notes that represent the DNA of our gender fluid fragrance creation for Confessions.
Right. So like
from the customer perspective.
From the customer's perspective.
Not from the creator perspective.
Exactly. And
wow,
so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. And so that's how we created our first 2 fragrances. That's how we created Get a Room and About Last Night. And it was a full curiosity experiment. Both of those words are applicable in this scenario.
Yes.
And we didn't create a website. We didn't create full-size packaging. We put them in our Scentbird 8 ml vial. We put a label on them, Get a Room and About Last Night, and we put them up on the platform, and we just wanted to see what would happen. And on a platform that has, 400, 500 brand name fragrances that are household names that people recognize every day and actively seek out, Get a Room became the 4th best-selling fragrance within that year.
Wow.
And it's people smell with their eyes, right? So like if you put Chanel on a label on a eau de parfum and you take the same perfume without that Chanel and you have someone smell it, they're going to say that they like the one that has the Chanel name on it, hands down, significantly better than the one without the name.
Right, because of the brand perception.
Exactly.
Smelling with their eyes, like you said.
Exactly. So brand is super important when it comes to fragrance. It just is. So for us to have a brand that no one's ever heard of, ever, because we literally
it doesn't exist.
Right, because there's no website
really.
for the brand. There's nothing. We just made it up. We invented it. And for it to rise to the top and beat all of those well-recognized brands, we knew that we had something really unique and really special. And so from there, we were like, well, we should probably make a brand.
Let's make more.
Yeah, let's do more
Let's do this
of
again.
Exactly. But from, kind of the jump, Confessions was inspired by what we knew people liked and what worked for them.
And that's almost better the way you approached it, because you're not putting the pressure on people to say what they like. You're following their actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
And you're able to leverage the Scentbird platform to tell you this.
Yeah.
So cool. So I also, in addition, I know we involved the customer a little bit more in terms of naming or the actual fragrances themselves.
Yes. So for Confessions for us, I think the names are just as important as the fragrance. I think, Maria came up with Get a Room and About Last Night because Maria is a superstar freak genius person.
For those who don't know, Maria Nuraslimova. She is the CEO and co-founder of Scentbird.
Yes. And I think those 2 names resonated with people so hard that even if they had no idea what the fragrance smelled like, they bought it because those names are so good.
And that's Get a Room and
About Last Night.
About Last Night.
Yeah. And we really felt like we needed to continue with that trajectory of having these really good, really interesting names. And so whenever we would create a fragrance, we would obviously pull in our copywriters and the team, and we would come up with a list of names that we felt were culturally relevant, like things that people say in conversation with their friends on a daily basis, but that maybe are not quite appropriate all of the time.
They're right up to the line.
Yeah. And sometimes like one toe over, you know what I mean?
We're dipping a toe in a rebellion.
Just see how test the waters out. And we would put it to a vote. So we would put it up on our Scentbird website and say, we're coming up with the next Confessions of a Rebel fragrance. Here are the names we're thinking. Vote on your favorite. P.S. If you don't like any of these, like fill in what you think could be a good one.
Write in your own.
Exactly. Yes. And we would launch what the people wanted.
It's a scent democracy.
Precisely. Exactly. 100%. We took it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
We took it a step further with our fragrance creation. And this aspect of it, I think, is very unique and something that no other brand does. Number one, because it makes our jobs really hard.
Yes.
And it makes us do 3 times the work, which is not the funnest, but it's worth it for the end product. So whenever we would create a fragrance for Confessions of a Rebel, we would create 3 fragrances, knowing fully well that we would only launch one of those 3 and the other 2 would just never see the light of day.
Wow.
So it's 3 times the work, 3 times the development, 3 times the concept, ideation, all of that. And what we would do is we created something called tastemakers. And tastemakers, we would take the 3 final fragrances. Maria and I, would say, whichever one of these babies makes it into the world, we are happy for. Like, we love all 3 of these individually, right. So it's good to go. Whatever the people decide.
Candidates.
Exactly. And we would put them in 1.5 ml little travel sprays. We would just label them 1, 2, and 3, fully blind, and we would send them out to 2,000 people.
How did you find the 2,000 people?
They signed up on Scentbird.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So again, we're involving the Scentbird customer.
Exactly. And those 2,000 people would get this little box with the 3 vials. They would get perfume blotters and they'd get a link to a website. So they'd go, they'd smell 1, 2, 3. They'd, spray it on the blotter, smell it, go to the website. They'd give us their comments and they'd vote on the one that they thought was the best. And whichever one those people voted on is what we launched. We just fully and completely trusted the people and went with what they have selected.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to know if people will love it as well. You've got 2,000 real people who aren't fragrance experts.
Exactly.
Just say, I like 1, 2, or 3. This is my fave. This is my jam.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Exactly. So now they are picking the fragrance and they're picking the name. So it's fully representative of who they are and what they want. And that is what would be born as our next fragrance every single time.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I know the customers love the names. I know you've told me that Get a Room and other Confessions of Rebel fragrances to this day are still in the top 10, top 20, top 5 even at any given time. And it's from this baby brand, Confessions of a Rebel.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start smelling through some fragrances. And as we're smelling along, it would be great if you can tell us a little bit about the notes, about the scent vibe, and any recommendations as to who the fragrance is for.
All right.
So first, let's go with the iconic Get a Room fragrance.
Yes, Get a Room. So Get a Room is... So Get a Room starts with notes on the top of... You get this like crisp green apple. You get this really beautiful, sexy, juicy mandarin. You have this heart of jasmine. Jasmine is one of those notes that is in almost every single one of the Confessions fragrances because it's like floral, but also animalic. So it's like sexy beast flower.
Ooh, a sexy beast flower. I like jasmine.
And then in the background, you have sandalwood, which I think is the best wood on the planet Earth. So it's like really creamy, sexy, woody. We also have like a smidge of like a vanilla praline hint in there. You also have a little bit of like a cypress. So you have this mix of this kind of vibrant, juicy fruit off the top that's grounded in these like richer, deeper, darker, sexy notes, which is why this fragrance wears so well for both men and women, and everyone, regardless of their gender, loves it.
Yes. Would you say this is, I know the classification isn't super important, but is this in the ambery family?
Woody fruity is technically how we classify it.
Woody fruity,
Yeah.
yes. So Jeniece, the next fragrance we have is Fuck Mondays.
So this fragrance, I think, is so good. I feel like this fragrance has swagger, if that makes sense. What you have in here is you get this like citrus top. So you have a little bit of a bergamot. There's actually peach in there too, which plays really, I think one of the best pairings ever is when you pair like a really beautiful, vibrant, juicy peach note with like a bergamot or like a mandarin or an orange, because those things meld into this like perfect harmony. You also have in here clary sage, which is like kind of like green, incensey. We have sandalwood again. We have sandalwood in everything. It's the best wood. It pairs well with everything. So this is like an aromatic, woody fragrance. But this for me is like, if you're sipping a gin martini and then like you go to a bonfire.
Yes.
And then you smell a little bit like, you smell like kind of citrusy and ginny, but also kind of like smoky, but also mysterious because you've been like, you have like the scent of the night.
Yes. It's lived in.
Yeah.
The next one is, I know I love all of these fragrances, but this is a fragrance that I have smelled that I have never smelled anything like it. And it is so unique and powerful. I'm actually wearing it right now. Bite Me. I love the Bite Me fragrance.
Bite Me so
much.
Good. I felt like it was super important to figure out a way to do a gourmand that could still be dark and sexy.
Yes.
And so we started thinking, okay, well, you can do gourmands in a couple ways. Gourmand means edible. So it can be sweet, but another way for something to be edible is to have like really luscious, mouth-watering, juicy fruit notes in it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a really sexy fruit? What's a fruit that's not juvenile? That's
sexy fruit.
Right. Strawberries are sexy.
Oh, yeah.
Strawberries are very sexy fruits. So that's really like the heart and soul of Bite Me, is this beautiful, beautiful, authentic, juicy strawberry note. And then you build around it. How do you make it not like, you know, a sun-ripened raspberry? How do you make it
or too sweet?
Exactly, that like an adult wants to wear. And again, you go back to those 13 perfectly unisex notes and you pull from there. So you add in the sandalwood, you add in the vetiver, you add in vanilla, but there's different types of vanilla, right? There's like whipped cream, there's like vanilla sugar, there's vanilla musk, there's vanilla orchid. So we went with the vanilla orchid. So you have the floralcy, but there's still the vanilla. And you just build it from there. So what you have when you smell this is you can see it's identifiably strawberry, but there's all these other facets to it. And I think what's the most interesting for me about Bite Me is I really thought like, okay, this is one that's going to be just decidedly more feminine. Like it just is. There's no way around it. We're using as many gender fluid notes as we can because that's, you know, really part of the brand's DNA, but it's a strawberry. And then we launched it and the boys went wild.
The boys loved it.
The boys loved it. And it shows again that I guess I don't know everything.
Who do you think the Bite Me fragrance is for?
Oh my gosh. You?
It is for me.
I mean,
it's definitely for me.
I feel like fragrance is for everybody all of the time, but I think the Bite Me fragrance is for someone who is like sassy.
Yes.
Like spunky, has like really good energy. I think there's like different ways to be sassy and spunky. Like I'm like borderline rude.
Direct.
And you're pleasant.
Why, thank you.
So, but you're also really funny and you have like a wit and a spunk about you. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like Bite Me is like for that kind of consumer. Whereas people who are ruder like me and more kind of you know, am I allowed to
think-
swear on here? Like shitty.
No, it's like there's a facet of bite me. I think that's the point about the fragrances. There's parts of your personality that can come out through that.
Like, you know, when people say from the South and they say bless your heart, but really they mean like go fuck yourself.
Oh yeah. I was raised by that woman.
That's bite me. That's bite me. Like you're sassy and you hold your own and like you're gonna tell people about themselves, but you're gonna do it in the sweetest way that they walk away feeling good, but also knowing that you just like put them in their place.
Yes. They're like, did she just cuss me out?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the bite
so
me
nice.
consumer.
Yes. It's very flirty too.
Yes.
I love it. I like wearing it out or just when I need like a little happiness and joy.
A little zha-zha.
A little zha-zha. So I wanted to ask you, what is something that has evolved for you with fragrance?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the way I think about fragrance has evolved a lot in some aspects, but in some aspects, I feel like the way I think about fragrance has become validated, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like my mom always said, she's like, and everybody's mom says this about them, but my mom was always just like, Jen likes things 10 years before they're cool. And everyone thinks she's crazy. And then 10 years later, everybody's doing it. And she's like, I should have figured out a way to like monetize that because we would be really, really rich right now. But I think even just from that young age of like liking fragrances like Le Male as a little girl and people being like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, it doesn't matter if this fragrances aren't for boys or girls. Like fragrances are just what you think smells good. And you know what I mean? But I think what's evolved probably is the way that we think about gender fluid now. Also, I think gender fluid used to be, you have to be citrus, aldehydic, like fresh cut grass, really clean smelling, like laundry, maybe a little bit of musk or something. And now we're creating fragrances that are gender fluid that have like a giant slug of strawberry up front. And then, you know, this really kind of sexy dry down of woods in the background. And it works on men and women. And in the past, someone would be like, well, this is too fruity. Like a man would never go for it. But now we're like, no, that's not the case. Like you can be a man and wear a fragrance that is, you know, one of the focal points of it is this strawberry, but there's all these surrounding players in it that make it so interesting and unique. And I think also now what we're looking at more is how fragrance kind of interacts with people's chemistry and their skin. Because I can wear something and you can wear it and it won't smell the same on us just based on the chemistry of our skin. And that's really interesting too. So these fragrances now, they push different notes if they're being worn on a man or if they're being worn on a woman too, which I think is super cool.
Yeah. So it's part of it is, you know, being in the seat that you're in, you're able to kind of represent that little girl and that who was able to, or who just had that perspective of fragrances for everyone. And you've brought that to the consumer in a way that allows them to choose and make the decisions for themselves on what they like, as opposed to, and I'm a marketer, so I love marketing, but as opposed to responding to what the positioning or the marketing is of the fragrance.
Yeah.
So like that validation is really awesome. It's something that I think is still evolving. I know the concept of perfumes versus colognes and
that's made up.
It's all made up.
That's pretend, folks.
Right.
Fragrance is made up of a blend of oils that have different scents in a solution, period. So the solution does not change if you are making a cologne or if you are making a fragrance. The only actual difference in the world is eau de toilette versus eau de parfum. And that is solely based on the percentage of the fragrance oils that are in the solution. So I believe if it's like over, oh my God, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think it's 12%. It's considered an eau de parfum, and it's below that, then it's considered an eau de toilette. But the rest is just jargon. It does not mean anything.
So a cologne doesn't mean a fragrance for men.
No.
A cologne is a fragrance structure that has nothing to do with gender.
Yeah. There is an olfactive category known as like an eau de cologne, which is like a very like fresh, clean, like grooming type of like traditional, like probably one of the very first masculine fragrant categories, but it is a coincidence that it has the same name. It does not mean anything. So you can use the word perfume or fragrance or cologne interchangeably if you are talking about masculine, feminine, gender fluid, whatever the case is. It is all exactly the same. It is the way that society tells you a fragrance is for a man or if it's for a woman. If it has the word cologne, we think it's for a man. If it has the word parfum, we think it's for a woman.
But it ain't true.
It's pretend.
It's all pretend. Wear what you want.
Be free.
Be free. You are free. Freedom.
To me, fragrance is the final frontier in terms of the beauty segments catching up with modern day society.
Yes.
I'm going to age myself. I'm very old. But do you remember the Dove campaign?
Absolutely.
Okay, right. So Dove came out, for everybody who's, I don't know what's like Gen Z and very young. Dove came out with a campaign like 20 years ago, 18 years ago or something, where they had women of all shapes and sizes in their underwear front and center. And nobody had ever done it before. And the entire world collectively gasped and stopped in their tracks, literally.
It was just so real and honest.
Yes, this was like before Ashley Graham, before people... It was like a la Kate Moss era where like you had to be like heroin chic to be considered
Rail
pretty.
thin,
exactly.
Blonde,
exactly.
long hair.
And Dove put people who looked like everybody in their underwear on giant billboards. And it shifted the entire culture of beauty from that moment on. I think they're the ones who started it personally. And it moved into makeup where you saw brands like Milk featuring transgender people, featuring women of all shapes and sizes, shaved hair, no hair, tons of freckles. Like anybody that represented real people all of a sudden became front and center in beauty. You saw, I'm going to say Fenty because that's who everyone recognizes, but P.S.
Absolutely.
Bare Minerals, Lauder, they were making 50 foundation shades 20 years before Fenty, but it's fine. Rihanna was the one that made people actually stop in their tracks and look at it, did 50 shades of every single color that existed. You see it in hair care, personal care, beauty. You see it everywhere.
Something for everybody now.
Except fragrance. If you paused, because we looked into this deeply, fragrance was that final frontier where they still held on with like a white knuckle grip to these traditional masculine and feminine archetype form of beauty, where it's like, you know, a woman.
I think of romance.
Right. Woman in a gold evening gown emerging out of a pool of water.
Right.
Like, love you, Charlize, but that's not how I'm swimming.
You don't like swimming in gold?
No.
Oh, you got to try it.
You know, like ruggedly handsome man, shirtless on horseback through a meadow.
Yes.
Like that's what fragrance still is for the most part right now. And we actually did an experiment where we pulled the ads of the top 20 selling fragrances from like 15 years ago and then pulled the ads of those same fragrances today and like literally
have not changed.
Not changed. Except fragrance houses will tell you that they have changed because the man's hair is now below his chin, which is very edgy. And they're like, no, this is new. They're like, before it could never be below the chin and now it's right here. So
we've got a few more inches of hair.
In 20 years, that's what we've come up with.
Progress.
But it never made sense to me. Or Maria, to be frank, because fragrance is the beauty category that is the most closely tied with your emotions and how you feel about yourself.
Memory too.
Exactly. And why is it that something that represents who you are so uniquely and intimately and distinctly doesn't represent who you are as a person when you're looking at how they're marketing it, talking about it, selling it, the advertisements, whatever the case is, it was still so deeply rooted in that tradition. And for us, that didn't make any sense. We were like, let's be the polar opposite of prim and proper.
Yes.
Like let's be as unproper. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. Great.
It is today.
Yes. Let's be as unproper as humanly possible. Let's be real, but not only real, like let's be messy. Let's be raw, like
unfiltered.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like let's just say it the way it actually is in life. I'm pretty sure Maria came up with Get a Room because she was on the subway and there were two people. And if you live in New York City, you've experienced this, and it is really annoying when it's like 9 a.m. on a Monday. And there are two people just like going at it like little wildebeests on the subway. And I'm
Like
fairly
no one's on the subway.
right. And like, P.S. it's rush hour. I'm literally pressed up against you while you are mounting this human.
As you're under some man's sweaty armpit.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure she was just like, oh my God, can you just get a room? Like, not this subway car, anywhere but this subway car. And we've all been, I mean, if you live in Manhattan, we've all been there. We've all said that, you know what I mean? And for us, it was like, let's just make a brand that represents real people and include those real people in the branding, in creating the brand, in making it, in naming it, in what it should smell like. Because shouldn't your fragrance actually represent who you are as a person? And like, what better way to make it represent that than actually include you in the creation process?
Yeah. Or even a part of something that you wouldn't necessarily say out loud.
Exactly.
Right? But you want to.
Yeah. It's your
like,
liquid courage.
It's your liquid courage without the calories.
Exactly.
Or the hangover.
Yeah.
So it's like, get a room, bite me, F Mondays, bitch please, well played. It's like all of these things that you're just kind of holding back. I love that theme with the names. And to your point, I think that's what makes it so relatable.
Yeah.
So, Jeniece, I would like to do a rapid fire with you.
Okay.
We call it Confessional Booth.
Okay.
Of course, because it's inspired by Confessions of a Rebel.
Got it.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right. So, in this rapid fire segment, I'm going to read you some confessions posted on the interwebs by real people for you to react to. So, step with me into the confessional booth where there's no shame, no judgment, freedom, and opportunity to get everything off of your chest.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think.
I'm not a priest, but I think we can be good listeners to the people of the interwebs, right?
Let's do it.
Someone says, anonymous, I buy perfume that I love the scent of, but then I feel reluctant to actually use it because I'm afraid to waste it.
No, what, girl? Money's meant to be spent.
Yes.
Just spend it. Use it, wear it. You buy it because you like it, right? Bathe in it. Bathe in it. That's what I say.
Wise words.
Yeah.
All right, next one. I hate the smell of cologne. I don't understand how it's been marketed as something to attract women.
Then don't buy it. Buy perfume, right? It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Also, every male olfactive category under the sun, you've smelled every single one that exists.
They said cologne at large.
Cologne at large. Well, then you should try Confessions because probably you just like maybe bite me, right? Like I think that this is a unicorn individual who, much like young Jeniece in 6th grade, doesn't want to be constrained by what society says is for men or for women.
It does seem that way.
So, and also women don't care. Like I literally share the same fragrances with my husband. So who cares, right? Like wear whatever you like.
Exactly.
As long as you feel good about yourself, then people are going to like you. And if they don't, then they're dumb and you don't want them to be your friends anyway.
Exactly. And, you know, something here in this person's confession makes me think that they're talking about fragrance in general, which is a little worrisome.
Ah.
Fragrance is not just for, I would say to this anonymous individual, fragrance is not just for attraction.
That's true. It's to feel good about yourself.
Exactly. It's personal.
Yep.
And, you know, smelling good is important.
Smelling good is important.
All
I
right.
put on perfume and man, I haven't gone anywhere in years.
Exactly.
I stay in my house. I smell good for myself.
Working from home.
Yeah.
Spray on fragrance.
Put it in your hair. You go like this every now and again.
Just shake it.
Feeling yourself.
Yeah. It's for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Next fragrance confession. Oh, I'm cringing already. I rub my wrists when applying fragrance. I know it's not the right way to do it, but I don't care. It's a habit I can't shake off.
Then don't. Right? I mean, listen, not for me personally, not for me, but I feel like at Confessions, we're all about like just doing your own thing and whatever feels good to you, do it for you. So if you like to rub your wrists, then you rub away your little heart's content Maybe also, though, try like spraying on your neck and in your hair and like a couple other places, not just your wrist. That's just my suggestion. But if that's what you like and that would make you, then do it.
Right.
That's okay.
I mean, you are releasing all of the notes in the air. This is something we've talked about.
Yeah.
So don't then complain that you can't smell the fragrance anymore, right?
That's true. Very fair. Also, I don't know. Like I said, I like people to smell me before they can see me personally. And if all you're doing is putting it here and here and going like this, that's just not going to happen. I like to be able to like flip my hair and like have a little burst of it come out and smell it. This is the spot where people are going to smell it the least ever, probably. So I would say if you're into being more subtle with your scents, then maybe just like branch out a smidge and like spray a little bit on your neck too.
Yes. It's not all about the wrists.
Right. It's not. Or just do like me and go like this and then clap.
Oh, I love this. I love the technique.
This is how professionals do it.
That's how the pros do it. Okay, now we're going to move into some confessions that are not really related to fragrance, but they're confessions nonetheless. So in the spirit of the brand, are you ready?
I was born ready.
Absolutely. Okay. This person confesses that sometimes they daydream about getting injured enough to go to the hospital just so that they can get some rest.
Oh, take a day off. But also, like, I kind of thought you were going to say because there's super hot doctors that you want to see, which in that place, like, don't injure yourself too bad. Just take a break, man. Just take a break. Take a break.
If that's not a cry for help,
take a break.
I think burnout is real.
Nobody says, I wish I worked harder or I wish I did more. Everybody says, I wish I enjoyed my life a little bit more. I wish I slowed down a little bit more. I wish I relaxed a little bit more. Relax. Carpe diem. Calm down. For everyone's sake, but also for your sake.
Carpe diem. Relax. Calm down. New Confessions of a Rebel Sense.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, this next one. I have been booking a male exotic dancer a few times a year for several years. First off, slow clap.
Dope. Dope for you. I'm just proud. If that makes you happy and he is sexy, Godspeed. I think more people should do things like that if it makes them feel good.
Absolutely. Like Magic Mike in real life.
Channing Tatum. Hello.
Hello. This next one. I cry really easily when watching movies or emotional music videos. I'm a 32-year-old male bodybuilder.
You know what? I applaud this gentleman with everything inside of me.
Yes.
I just gave birth to a baby boy, and the whole thing of boys don't cry, men shouldn't have feelings is not something that we are going to be teaching our child.
Nope.
I think it is more masculine to cry and be emotional because it is harder to do that. And I applaud you.
I applaud you.
Yeah.
Adios to toxic masculinity.
Exactly. I celebrate you, bodybuilder, sir.
You cry on, bodybuilder.
Yes.
What fragrance should he wear from the Confessions line? Well played.
Well played is delicious.
Great. All right. Now I have some confessions that come directly from confessionsofarebel.com. So on the confessionsofarebel.com, there is a portal and it's called the Confessional Booth. And people are able to type in confessions and we post the most funny ones on that Confessional Booth page.
I'm into that.
So here's a few. I ate all of my son's chocolate bars, then convinced him that it was him who ate it all. Their name is One Cool Mama.
I feel like that's my soulmate. I feel like you're my soulmate. And I will also do the same thing. And also, I hope my husband's not listening, but like I literally do that to him all of the time. All of the time. He'll be like, you ate all of the double stuffed Oreos. And I'll be like, you must have ate them while in your sleep. I didn't do that. And he believes me.
Nothing's wrong with a little bit of gaslighting.
I don't want to be shamed for my Oreo habit, and you did it, not me.
Exactly. You are not culpable. All right, this one is, I tell everyone my delicious ice cream recipe is fat-free, but I always use full-fat milk.
Good for you. Because you know what? It'll make them enjoy it more. And I think that our society is way too enraptured, that's not the right word, caught up with diet culture. Mm-hmm. So eat that ice cream. Do your thing.
It's hilarious. Okay, last one. I can't stand my boyfriend's sister.
Oh, I've been there. Not with my husband. I love you, Jill.
We love Jill.
Yeah, Jill's great. I mean, not everyone's for everyone. Maybe she sucks. Maybe you're great and she sucks.
It's true.
Yeah.
So I thank you and applaud everyone who puts their confessions out there.
It's brave.
It's brave. And if this is for any listeners, if there's something you want to get off your chest, go to confessionsofArebel.com/pages/confessional booth.
http://
And we'd love to hear it. And we might share it anonymously on social media. And if you're up for it, we would contact you and give you some Confessions of Rebel fragrances.
Oh, I like that.
I know.
Do it, guys.
Do it. Confess. All right.
I feel better.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Jeniece. It was great to hear about all things confessions and your love of fragrance. I just wanted to ask you a few more questions. And one of them is, what is the biggest thing you've learned from bringing Confessions of a Rebel to life in that process?
Oh, I think... So Confessions was such a humbling experience, to be completely honest, because as a developer, you feel like a lot of times you're like, I'm a creative genius. I know everything. Any idea I have is perfect. And people who don't like it are stupid. Like every single person who works in marketing or product development has probably felt like that at some point in their life where like,
guilty.
You don't think my idea is good? Well, you just don't get it. You're small-minded. Like literally is.
I pity you.
Yeah. Like, oh, how sad for you. That's embarrassing. But Confessions was super humbling because it was the first time that, and here's my confession. I was very resistant with Maria when she was like, no, we're going to do tastemakers and we're going to ask people what they think. And I was like, but they're not experts. I'm the expert. Why would you ask? Why? I'm the expert. That's why I'm here. That's why you hired me. And she's like, no, but we need to understand what people like and don't like. And I'm like, but I know what they like. And I pushed back on her and she was like, I understand where you're coming from, but like, this is really important. And this is going to change the ways that we do things and the way people do things. And she was 100% right. So for me, Confessions was really humbling in that I had to swallow my creative ego and say, maybe I don't know everything. And maybe I am not like the creative guru genius of the universe. And let's actually stop and listen to what people are saying. And when we did that, we learned so much. And now my mindset has shifted to the point where I look forward to hearing from them and reading their thoughts and understanding their point of view and going to them with, do you like this fragrance? Do you like this name? What do you think about this? Because it's a way to really connect with your consumer on a much deeper level and make sure that what you're doing is resonating with them. And so many times people have been like, you are the first fragrance brand that I feel actually like sees me and understands me. And that I think is super special. And that for me has probably been like the biggest shift in my perspective since starting to work on developing Confessions.
That's awesome. That's really interesting. And that's also a brave confession.
I fought that hard. I fought that so hard.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.